Hello, and welcome to our webinar. In this webinar, we will cover the year-end process for Sage Payroll Ireland. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover in the webinar. We'll look at the year-end process and we'll give you an overview of this, and we'll look at how PAYE modernisation has improved and simplified the year-end process for employers. We'll talk about extra pay periods and finalising 2021. This is to make sure that you have completed everything that you need to before moving on to your year-end and into 2022. I will then demo your year-end process in Sage Payroll, and at the end of the webinar, we'll go through any legislation changes you should be aware of. So first of all, let's take a look at how PAYE modernisation has simplified your payroll process and in turn the year-end process. PAYE modernisation has been in place for a little while now. These changes were brought in by Revenue in 2019. So let's have a quick look at this process. So during each pay run, you will retrieve an RPN from Revenue. And when you complete your pay run, you will send a submission off to Revenue as well. This is all happening in real time every time you process your payroll. When you complete your pay run, you will provide your employees with a pay slip. The second part of what we're going to look at is at the end of each month. So on the 5th of each month, Revenue will make the statement of account available to you. This is based on the payroll values that you have submitted to them in the previous month. You can run the ROS liability report in Payroll to reconcile your payroll against your statement of account with ROS. And based on the information that you have submitted, the My Account area of ROS is updated. So each employee can log into their My Account and view their pay information, as well as receiving their payslip from you. Moving on to the end of the tax year. Throughout the year, you have retrieved your RPNs, and you have completed your payroll for each period, submitting those in real time to Revenue. So Revenue have all of the information that they need from you for the tax year. So there's only a few tasks for you to complete at year end, making the process much easier. Your employee will have an end of year statement and an employment details summary made available to them in their My Account with Revenue. As part of the year end routine, you must review your employee pay to make sure that the values and information that you have submitted throughout the year to ROS is correct. You can also run the employment details statement in the payroll year-end section of the programme. We'll cover this in more detail a little later in the webinar and show you these reports in the payroll. But before running the reports and moving on to 2022, there are a few things to check. So we'll go through these now so that you are ready to complete your 2021 tax year processing. We'll start with advancing holiday pay, moving on to extra pay periods, also known as week 53. And then we'll run through a checklist, including some information on current year leavers. So as the tax year falls over Christmas and New Year, it is likely that you'll have employees on holiday at this time. So let's take a look at how you should process holiday pay over the year-end period. And this all depends on whether the holiday is going to span over 2 tax years or not. So first of all, you can advance your holiday pay up to and including week 52. So if you have holiday pay to pay in week 51, which covers week 51 and 52, then that is absolutely fine. You can process that as an advanced holiday payment. Alternatively, if you prefer, you can pay each week separately. So the second scenario here is if you need to advance pay spanning the 2 tax years. You should not advance any holiday pay over 2 tax years. You should process each tax week separately. So in this example, if you're in week 52 and you wanted to pay holiday pay for week 1 of 2022, you should process week 52 as normal and then process a separate week for week 1 in the new tax year. Another thing worth noting is if you do have an extra pay period, this should be processed separately as well. Week 53 should not be included in any advance payments. There is a note there at the bottom just to remind you if you are processing separate weeks, you will need to send a separate payment file to the bank. This means your employees will receive 2 separate payments for each week. Moving on to extra pay periods. If you process a weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly payroll, you do need to check if you have an extra pay period. And you should check this before you process your final pay run of the tax year. So in 2021, you have an extra pay period if your usual pay date falls on Friday, the 31st of December 2021. If your usual pay date is not due to fall on that date, you do not have a week 53 and you shouldn't change your pay date so that you have one. If you do have an extra pay run, it will be your final pay run of the year, but should be processed as normal. And to comply with government legislation, tax and USC calculates in the extra pay run on a week 1 basis. The system will handle all of that for you, and there's nothing that you have to change in the program to ensure any calculations are correct. So here's a checklist of the things that you should do before completing your final pay period. First of all, if you have any leavers that need to be processed before you process your final pay of 2021, please make sure that you do that and they are made leavers within the current year. Check if you have an extra pay run or a week 53, and if you do, make sure that you run that in your payroll before completing your year-end process. Please make sure that you do not advance any holiday pay over 2 tax years. Make sure you process these weeks separately and make any payments separately too. Then you can process your final pay run and submit that to ROS and move on to your year-end process and your 2022 processing. So let's move on to the year-end process. So this is much easier than it has been in the past. If you have been running a payroll for quite some time, you may remember P35s and P60s at year-end. PAYE modernisation has put an end to those forms, and the process is now much easier. The only task for you as an employer is to review your employee pay. You can also run the employment detail statement for reconciliation purposes. The employee can access their official forms in their My account. This is their employment detail summary and their end-of-year statement. I will now demo the year-end in Sage Payroll. I will show you the reports and then we'll come back to recap. So first of all, as you can see, I have completed my full tax year and my next monthly pay run showing is January 2022. So I have already completed my checklist and I am ready to process my year end. Before you run your year end, you may choose to reconcile some reports. So one of these reports is your ROS liability report, which shows a breakdown of your liabilities each period. If we go into pay runs, and you can start with the first pay run if you'd like. So I'll just click on month 1. And then you can see there is a liability report within the completed pay run screen. This tells me how much my ROS liability was for that reporting period. You can then check that value against the information with ROS to make sure that you have paid the correct amount each pay period. If I just close that report, I can go back to pay runs and repeat the process for each month going into the report. If you would like to print the report, there's a button at the top. So that report that I've just shown you can be reconciled against your statement of account with revenue. You also have your liability totals report. This report will give you the information for each pay period. So if you would like to reconcile your ROS liability report for each pay run against this one, you can simply choose the tax year, choose your pay frequency, choose which pay period you would like to run the report for, and click Generate. Then you can export this as a PDF or a CSV. This report is per pay period, whereas the ROS liability report will show you the information for the full reporting period. So you might have to run this report for 4 weeks to reconcile that against your ROS liability report. If we now move on to year end. When you first come into the year end tab, you need to make sure that you have the correct year selected at the top. Please remember that when you're going through this process, we do have help options available. If you choose the question mark icon at the top here, that will take you to our help files and you can access our payroll year-end guide. So moving on to the reports within the year-end section. If we click Review Employee Pay, you will get a list of your employees. To view the details, click on the View Details button next to each individual member of staff. This will give you a breakdown of their pay, their taxes, and their deductions. It will give you their final net pay and any additional information. You will need to go through this report to make sure that everything that you have paid the employee throughout the tax year is correct and there's been no errors. You can click on the payslip link on the right-hand side and view that person's payslip for that period. You can export this report to PDF and you can save or print that report from here. To return to the employee list, click the button at the bottom right, and then you can repeat the process for each employee, making sure that everybody has been paid correctly in 2021. Once you have completed this process for everybody, you can click the Return to Year-End button and tick the box to say that your employee pay has been reviewed. The next report is your Employee Details Statement. This report can be given to your employees for them to reconcile against their official statement with ROS. Click Print Employee Statement, and you have two options here. You can view the statement individually, and you can export that as a PDF. Once you have this, you can print or save the report. If I return to the employee list, you also have the option to export all. This will give you every person's employee details statement for 2021. Again, you can save or print this. Once you're happy, click Return to Year-End. That is your year-end processing complete. Once you have completed all of your reconciliation and you are happy that everything that you have processed throughout the year is correct, you can move on to your processing for 2022. So let's recap on those reports now. So an optional step of your year-end is checking and reconciling your statement of account against your liability totals from Sage Payroll. This is to make sure that the revenue statement of account matches your payroll and matches what you have processed throughout the year. As this statement of account with revenue isn't available until the 5th of each month, you won't be able to review December until the 5th of January. But you can review up to November if you're running this process in December. Remember, you can go in after the 5th of January and review December separately. As part of the year-end routine, you must review your employee pay to make sure that the values and information you have submitted to revenue are correct. Make sure that you choose the correct tax year when you go into the year-end section of the programme, and then you can run this report for each employee and view their pay slips with the link on the right-hand side should you need to. And you can export this for your records as a PDF. Next, we have the Employee Details Statement. This is a really good report to reconcile against the Employment Details Summary, also known as EDS. This shows cumulative year-to-date values for your employees. You can give this report to your employees, however, their official form should be obtained from their My Account with ROS. So we'll now take a look at what's new for 2022. So there are a few budget changes we've picked out for you. The standard rate cut-offs for income tax have been increased. So for a single person, that's now €36,800. Tax credits have also increased. So as an example, for a single person, these are now €3,400. The upper threshold for the 2% band of USC, if you are on a standard rate, is $21,295. Any changes to tax credits and USC thresholds will be retrieved in your first RPN when you run the payroll in 2022. Minimum wage increases to €10.50. So please ensure you have amended any payments necessary in the payroll from the 1st of January 2022 to make sure that any employees on minimum wage are being paid correctly. The weekly income threshold for the higher rate of employer PRSI is going up to €410. The Employment Wage Subsidy Scheme is continuing until the 30th of April 2022. The only action you need to take is to retrieve your RPNs and ensure that you are paying the correct minimum wage. So let's take a look at some of the further support available to you. You can visit our Help Centre by clicking the Help option at the top right-hand side of your payroll. Also, wherever you are in the software, if you see a question mark icon, you can click that and it will take you to the Help Centre article. Within the Help Centre, there is a payroll year-end guide. So if you do need to follow through the steps for your payroll year-end, you can access that with the question mark icon in the year-end tab. So that takes us to the end of the webinar today. Thank you for watching, and we do hope that you are now confident in running your final pay period and your year end.